is I guess we're on text 13. In my book, it is page 200. Chapter 4, text 13. I thought what we do today is we go through a number of verses. So I think we're going to tackle maybe half a dozen, even 10 verses. By way of introduction, thus far in the Gita, Krsna has primarily spoken about detachment and action. So we've been given some knowledge. The knowledge is that you're not the body. And then fueled by that, now, the knowledge that you're not the body is called what? In the Gita, it's called Sankhya, that's right. And then we've been told what to do with that knowledge that you're not the body. And that is you should act, do your duty, but be unattached to the fruits. And that is called what in the Gita? It's called yoga or Buddha yoga. Let's not mumble, just speak loudly so I don't have to get some kind of supersonic hearing to be able to hear what you're saying as you mumble under your breath. It's called either yoga, or if you want to put an adjective in front of it, it's called Buddha yoga. That's correct. The Buddhi in Buddha yoga means enlightened. And the enlightenment is what? Specifically in Buddha yoga, the Buddhi or the enlightenment is specifically what, Peyton? What's the enlightenment? Catch up, guys. What's the enlightenment, Shri?
Being detached.
Yeah, what's the enlightenment? What is the piece of knowledge that then allows you to perform your action without being attached?
Your soul, not the body.
To know that you're not the body. And knowing you're not the body is called what?
Sankhya.
It's called Sankhya. So Sankhya is a cognitive reality. It's a cognitive element. It's the idea that you're not the body. And then knowing you're not the body empowers you to act and behave. It's a behavioral component in a detached way. And so the behavioral component is fueled by the cognitive element. The cognitive element, again, is what? Peyton? Come on, spit it out, man. That's right. That's right. Don't just be a pretty face. Be smart too. Have a brain in there somewhere. To know you're not the body, and then the result of knowing you're not the body is you do what, Shri?
Yoga, which is act attached.
You act attached. That's right. So the cognitive component fuels the behavioral element. Did you guys get it? So the Buddhi in Buddha yoga, Buddhi means what again? Hidden? Go ahead. Intelligent, enlightened, good. And in this compound word, Buddha yoga, in this compound word, the word Buddhi is an adjective, means enlightened, and it then is fueling, or it's, modifying the meaning of the noun yoga. And so this enlightened yoga, what exactly is the enlightenment we're talking about in the Buddha yoga? Bingo. You see how simple it is? It's so simple, you guys should feel stupid for not already knowing it. It's Buddha yoga because the Buddhi was just taught to you, you're not the body, then you perform action in a detached way, and then it's called Buddha yoga because you just learned a lesson, and then you apply that lesson, theory and practice, a hypothesis and experiment, an idea, and the follow-through on that idea, cognition and behavior, cognitive behavioral therapy for the self. Do you guys follow it? Thus far in the Gita, we've primarily talked about that. Primarily. The 4th chapter does something unusual. It springboards off of maybe some foreshadowing, but it springboards off of this solid structure, this solid foundation to do your duty but not be attached to the results, and it gets into what at the beginning of the 4th chapter? Who else besides hidden? What happens at the beginning of the 4th chapter, which is an evolution from, a departure from, a springboard off of the idea that you're not the body and you should act in a detached way? What does the 4th chapter get into in a big way? Shri.
What it looks like to...
No. What's the 4th chapter get into? Yeah.
Krishna
Krishna is God. Come on, guys. We've been doing this for weeks now. Do you remember how we had these extensive conversations about Krishna being God and how that's a departure from what we've been doing thus far? Do you remember that? How'd you forget that? Come on, guys. This is like arithmetic. I want to do some actual algebra here. And you guys, I'm still like teaching you guys for 8 years, 2 + 2 = 4. And somehow you have amnesia and you forget everything we talked about in the previous class, and I can't move forward. Do you remember this? We had these extensive discussions about theology and how everything changed in the 4th chapter. Omnipotence, omniscience, omnibenevolence, and Arjuna has his doubts and Krishna responds to it. Do you guys remember this? So then how did you forget it? Is there any other massive departure from what we've talked about all throughout the Gita that happens in the beginning of the 4th chapter? Are there like other contenders that you guys were thinking maybe I was talking about? There's only one, right? And this is it. What's the major departure, Shri?
Krishna introduces himself as God.
Bingo. Right? Did you know this? Then raise your hand and rescue me. So at least I got one person I'm playing to. Otherwise, I start to think that you've caught amnesia from all of these other people. And you lost your intelligence. It's not like you come in this room and you all lose your intelligence. I'm practically handing it to you on a silver platter. Let's get it right now, one time through. Thus far, the Gita has primarily taught one major lesson. What's the major lesson the Gita has been teaching us? You're not the body. That is a cognitive element. What's the behavioral component? Which is? All right, don't freak out. Just give me one-word answers. You know this stuff. You can talk about it. You can do a paragraph on it. You don't need to give me a one-word answer. You know this stuff. Yoga, which is behaving in a detached way. What's that also called sometimes? Boom! You can sometimes call it Buddha Yoga in the 2nd chapter of the Gita. It's also called Karma Yoga in the 3rd chapter of the Gita. We've been focused on that. This cognitive behavioral therapy. And then Krishna switches gears suddenly in the 4th chapter, out of nowhere. Not really, but he builds on a solid foundation and he starts to explore this new facet of the Gita. It's maybe been foreshadowed, but he really starts to get into it in considerable depth. What is that? What does he get into?
I am the introduction to I am God.
Yeah, he begins to introduce. I mean, you're fumbling, but okay, you got it. You guys, it's okay. You get the win. You get an A, maybe an A-. But yeah, he starts to get into this idea, I'm God. That's new. Right? And then last week, and you have to have been here last week to know what we talked about. Last week he contrasted that theism, that bhakti, that devotion to him to something else. Hidden, what was it? That's right. He got into polytheism as a contrast, as a counterpoint to theism. And he merged, and it's kind of a double-barreled thing he did. You could theoretically be selfless and devoted to a demigod, although you'd be ignorant because you wouldn't understand there was one source of everything. But he double barrels it and he links worshiping demigods to a certain other element. What is that other element? Like people who worship demigods are also,
Interested in material success.
bingo, they're also materialists. And so materialism and the worship of many gods, and over here, the worship of the one true deity combined with selfless devotion. If you really want to be a really systematic, you would have to then argue why you couldn't be selflessly devoted to a demigod. And then you would have to get into an argument of how you'd have to have proper knowledge in order to cultivate proper devotion. Knowledge is a prerequisite for devotion. To know him is to love him. And if you were thinking that there were many deities, you were then in ignorance, and that would lead you to thinking there were many competitors, and your only choice would be materialism, because you couldn't have a selfless devotion for one true supreme source of everything, because you don't believe in one supreme source of everything. And so the best you can do is pick one out of many people to try and stack the deck in your favor, but you haven't gotten to an actual position of theism yet where you realize there is one true source of everything that you can surrender to, that will protect you, that will take care of all your needs, and therefore you couldn't cultivate selfless devotion. You guys follow that? You can make that argument. I just did. I made it in brief, but you can make that argument of how materialism is the foundation of polytheism, and how monotheism is required as a theological ideal in order to arrive at selfless and complete devotion. Did you guys follow that? Because otherwise, you're not really worshiping the source. You're not really in touch with the one without a second. You're not really dealing with the creator of all things. You're dealing with some derivative power, some derivative force. Now, what's happened so far? Krishna's taught mainly one idea. What's the idea, JC?
In the 4th chapter?
Nope, in the whole Gita. Good question. Krishna taught mainly one idea in the whole Gita thus far. What has he taught? Sankhya, also known as in English? Boom, you're not the body. And if you get that cognitive idea, you can engage in the proper behavior, and the proper behavior is to work without attachment. And that's also called Buddhi Yoga or Karma Yoga in the 3rd chapter. But it's introduced as Buddhi Yoga and Yoga. Great. Then in the 4th chapter, he jumps into theism. He contrasts that to polytheism. Jumps into monotheism. Contrasts that to polytheism. And we got into some other terms. Monolatry and henotheism and kathenotheism last week. If you were here, we did a little exploration of various types of monotheistic-esque belief systems. We'd really need to segue into panentheism to understand the Gita, and monism, that everything comes from one source. Because within monotheism, there's usually a dualistic understanding that there's God and Satan, there's heaven and hell, and God usually created the world ex nihilo, out of nothing, and therefore the world truly has nothing that intrinsically connects it to God. It becomes a bit of sleight of hand for us to get to heaven, usually through the vicarious atonement of Jesus, because we have no divine right. We are not actually divine. We're born with immortal sin, and we're fractured souls systemically. And so monotheism usually has this hard dualism attached to it, whereas our version of monotheism is actually monistic. We believe in one source, which is why all of the Vaishnava traditions monotheism are called things like Vishishta Advaita, or specified oneness, Shuddha Advaita, or purified oneness. In other words, they want to say we're not merely Kevala Advaita, or complete oneness, but there's a oneness that requires some nuance. There's a oneness that requires some additional ideas. So if we can understand how we're both one with and different from God, and that's because we're a Vedanta tradition, which means we're monistic, which is usually contrasted to monotheism, that there's a oneness, but that oneness allows for a difference. Therefore, we are qualitatively one with the Absolute. We're pure souls, but we are quantitatively distinct. We're also distinct in terms of ontological dependence. We are derivative. We are secondary. We are dependent on God. Sometimes that takes the form of an almost linear time progression that God created us. But to be more correct from the Vedic literatures themselves, we are ontologically dependent, although we are also eternal. We were created by God, but we were created eternally. Therefore, we've always existed, and we've always been dependent on the deity. But nonetheless, there's a source of everything, including us. Therefore, there's no true hell. There's no true broken souls. There's no one who's truly independent or not dependent on God. There's no hell or place which is totally bereft of God's presence, because everything comes from the divine. Everything's connected to the divine. And we still believe in a loving relationship with the deity forever. And so you get the best of both worlds. And that's why a lot of times our tradition wouldn't properly be called monotheism, because A, we believe in many gods, therefore we be monolatry, latria, one worshipped God, as opposed to henotheism, one God at a time, as opposed to kathenotheism, one God after one God being worshipped, each one sounding like they're the supreme, or just the one you pick, which is henotheism, usually spoken about Greek early forms of monotheism in Greek culture, where one god would be picked and worshipped exclusively as if they were the only one that was important, like a temple to Apollo, where they wouldn't worship many gods. So it wasn't true polytheism. They called it henotheism. Monolatry, which is what Judaism was called because they believed in many deities, but only believed one of them was worthy of worship. Our tradition doesn't fit any of those models perfectly because we have this monistic element that everything comes from. Jamadi asya yataha, Jamadyasya yataha. That the Brahman is that thing from which everything comes. Did you guys follow that? Did you guys follow that? Okay, so that's what we covered so far up to last week. Now what's Krishna going to do in the next verses? You, by the way, should have all read ahead 10 verses so that you're not the village idiots out there in the audience. I mean, you guys know what we're doing it serially. So if I was doing a bunch of serial classes with a teacher like me who was fiery and super sharp, super smart, and was lapping you, I would definitely read ahead so that I was better prepped just to be able to follow so I don't get lapped because I'm going 5 miles an hour and my teacher's going 50. How many of you read ahead? All right, Hitin, what's Krishna going to get into now?
He's going to explain about karma yoga, and then he'll explain things like action.
Okay, but it's simpler than that. That's great. You did read ahead, but you didn't get the connection. What's the connection to what we've been talking about?
How karma yoga will connect back to him with bhakti yoga.
Good, good. Krishna is going to now go back to describing selfless action, detached action, being in this world but not of it. He's going to go back to that cognitive behavioral therapy of Sankhya Yoga that he taught us in the second chapter, that he's been teaching us all along. He added in the theistic element, which is going to eventually allow him to marry theism with detached action, which is amazing. Imagine if you had all the devotion of Christianity with all of the cool non-duality of Buddhism. Imagine if you had a philosophy that married those two ideas together. Ecstatic, devotional, emotive, spiritual life. Divine, rapturous, romantic love of the deity. Combined with cool, calm, and collected, non-dual, Buddhistic, detached philosophy. Well, what are you missing? It's the perfect blend. A cheesy version of this is every once in a while you'll have somebody play Vivaldi's Four Seasons or something like that on an electric guitar, which I think is just terrible. I'm so not into that proggy, heavy metal-esque, spastic guitar solo thing that became all the rage when heavy metal died an ignoble death in the early 80s. So, but you get this, like the evolution of that was into these just incredibly complicated, just peeling guitar. It all started with Eddie Van Halen, who when he did it was cool, but then it eventually segued into this, just awful stuff, like Yngwie Malmsteen. If I wanted to actually just be a hater, and so, but you see that merging of two things that would normally seem to be opposites. You follow? Does that make sense? Now, an incredible version of this happened about a decade earlier when blues merged with the electric guitar. And you had the era of classic rock with some of the best music that's ever been made in the history of the world. So that was an example, and perhaps an even better example would be peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. The United States contribution to world cuisine. And so you've got salty and sweet. I used to hear about salty and sweet and think, that sounds gross. Sweet and salty. Then at some point I realized, oh, wait a second, that's a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I love salty and sweet. Are you kidding me? What an amazing combination, right? And of course, even better than peanut butter and jelly, this amazing combination. It's practically the greatest combination of two foods in the history of the world. Peanut butter and chocolate. Sometimes you get these two things and you didn't think they could be put together. And then somebody puts them together and you're like, half my life was wasted. Until I realized these two things could be put together. And in fact, there's nothing better than those two things together. We can just go ahead and do that every day, forever. Isn't it? Right? What an amazing religious idea. To take all of the devotion, all of the ecstatic, rapturous states of spiritual, romantic, divine love and seamlessly marry those to radically anti-materialistic, non-dualistic Buddhist thought. In a way that also solves the problem of evil by seeing us as divine instead of as fractured souls, which would not come from an all-good and all-powerful God anyway. And just to deal with all the thorny topics that have been vexing religion forever, all of a sudden just evaporate when you take these two ideals and you put them together properly. Eventually, Krishna is going to take detached action. Eventually, Krishna's going to say, we're not doing yoga. At least we're not doing that kind of yoga. When Shri gets stressed out, she does weird contortionist moves because she's quadruple jointed or whatever she's got going on. But you just do incredibly difficult yoga poses just while you're sitting there. Put your foot behind your head and just like some people crack their knuckles or twiddle their thumbs. You put your feet behind your head. And so we're going to get there. But to get there, Krishna's going to take us back and he's going to continue to look at detached action, doing your duty, but not being attached to the results. We're not going to merely stay where we are and just do repetition of what's already been done, which is, of course, what you guys need because you're all blockheads who can't remember stuff for more than the amount of time it takes for me to say it and then ask you if you've understood it. But Krishna's assuming that you guys are way more intelligent than you actually are. And so he's going to start to build on the ideas he's introduced, which means we have to get smarter and more focused because Krishna's going to add more stuff to the equation. He's going to go back and hit the same idea of detached action, assuming that you understand you're not the body. But he's going to start to add bells and whistles to it till it becomes a very full, nuanced idea that he's taken the trouble to explain to you over several iterations so that you can really own it. And if you're smart, and you can prove you're smart today, you can say, I'm not a blockhead, as you have accused me of being. I'm not the village idiot, although you accused me of that too. You can prove I'm not being lapped by you. I'm smart. I'm in the running. I'm a contender. You can do that today. And I will put my tail between my legs and I will admit that you are sophisticated and intelligent and intellectually astute And you have an attention span longer than the goldfish. Although goldfish actually have reasonable attention spans, they have a reasonable memory. That's just an urban myth. So you guys have like the memory that goldfish are unfairly accused of having, as opposed to the memory of the goldfish. You can prove me wrong on all those fronts and all the other disparaging things I think about you by expertly noting today how Krishna evolves his teaching that you're not the body, and the bells and whistles he adds, and how he fleshes out and adds to and nuances and deepens and makes more profound the ideas that he's already introduced. I've made it really easy for you guys because I gave it to you all on a platter, so it's right now in front of you. So now we can start to read this. And what I want to have happen today, because Krishna's really done 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Krishna's really done several treatments of You're Not the Body. 8. He did Sankhya, You're Not the Body. He did Yoga, Act Attached. He then explained the Sita Pragya Muni, the person who's acting like this, to model that behavior for you. Then he troubleshot, and got into some of the things that could distract you. That's all in the 2nd chapter. In the 3rd chapter, he hit detached action again, then hit yagna, then hit detached action to help other people, then did another version of that linked to calm or lust, which pulls you away from your ability to do stuff. So he's actually done 8 versions of detached action so far between chapter 2 and 3. Each time going over the same information again, as we do, and each time adding a little bit. Doing it for other people, not disturbing their mind, what the major obstacle is. What the person looks like who's doing that successfully. What are some of the things to watch out for? The benefits of doing it. How this is contrastable to the Vedic tradition. The basic philosophy from a number of different angles that you're not the body. He did that, a few versions of that too, in the beginning of the 2nd chapter. He's really just been like a helix, just same information. A little bit more nuance, moving forward. Same information, moving forward. It's okay. If you just get the same information, it's okay. But if you really want to appreciate the Gita, you have to be able to hold on to the same information and then see how each version, it's moving forward like a circle that moves forward like a helix. And I think I've done an excellent job of priming the pump for you guys to start to notice this stuff. And so without further ado, text 13. Chaturvarnyam maya shrishtam guna karma vibhagashaha. Okay. According to the division of guna and karma. Guna means nature, karma means action. So according to the division of people's natures and their concomitant actions. Chaturvarnyam, the 4 varnas. What are the 4 varnas? Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. These 4 social orders. Right? Social? Yeah, I guess they're social orders, yeah. Social orders. These 4, in a lot of ways, they're vocational divisions. 4 different ways people work in the world. According to their nature, according to their activities. The world's divided. There's 4. Maya Shrishtam. They were created by me. The Varna system was created by me. According to people's natures and the work associated with those natures. Does that mean Krishna created your natures? Not necessarily. Rather, you have a nature based on your previous actions. You're born in this world with a pre-existing rap sheet, so to speak. It gives you a certain prison term, along with certain privileges. And Krishna's created a system whereby no matter what your proclivities are, what your inclinations are, there's a way for you to fit in and be a part of something bigger than yourself. Why would Krishna segue into this? How is this related to what we've talked about so far? Now, when I ask you a question like that, what is the first thing you're supposed to do when I ask you a question like that, which is very difficult to answer? Why is Krishna segueing into talking about the 4 Varnas? Why would you do that? When I ask you a question like that, you don't know the answer to it. I'm looking at you guys. You don't know the answer to it. None of you know the answer to it. Maybe you do, but none of you guys look like you know the answer to it. When I ask you a question like that, what are you supposed to do immediately? Leela.
I want to read
That's right. What do you want to read?
the rest of the verse.
That's right. You want to read the rest of the verse, and what else?
What comes before
What comes before and
that?
after. Why do you want to do that?
Because I assume the answer will be
Boom. Because Krishna's a systematic thinker, and you can assume that you will be able to find some hints, some clues, or even the answer handed to you on a silver platter. I just cut Krishna off halfway through his verse. So you want to finish the verse, read what comes before and after. Why don't you do that now? Start by reading the rest of the verse. And if you want to, if you don't get the answer, then you can look at what comes before and after. Although you know what comes before, it's the demigod worship. You can read what comes after if you want to. I'll give you 1 minute. Okay, I lied. That's all the time you get. Who's got an answer for me? Who knows? Dhruv knows. Who else knows? JC knows. Who else knows? That's right, you keep reading. You don't like, I tell you how many times, if I don't say close your book, you keep reading. That's exactly what you do. Good man. Who else knows? All right, JC, lay it on me.
He is setting up the question of what proper action is.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I hadn't thought of that. That's great. That's great. That's good. Krishna's explaining some tools to govern proper action. So instead of just saying act right, he's saying within one of these 4 varnas according to what your nature is. That's great. That's good. I hadn't thought of that. So even better. It's a really good fit. Mine is a better fit. But yours is really good. And I actually believe that Krishna, being clever, is able to do more than one thing at a time. And so what Krishna is doing here is he's teaching us 2 lessons. Yours is the minor, mine is the major. But yours is not small minor. It's very important. It's really nice what you said. Dhruv, what's he doing?
Krishna is saying that I am the source of correct action. I prescribe it.
That's good, but not quite there. You almost got it. Yeah.
He's explaining his role in the world and how people act in the world.
Yeah, that's true, but that's not it. What is it?
He just talked about the value of surrendering to him.
No. Listen up. Tasya kartaram apimam vidhi. Tasya, of this system of 4 varnas, kartaram api, although I am the maker of this system. I'm making this system in this world for all of you. Mam vidhi, although I've done that, api, although I've done that, mam vidhi, you know me, akartaram avyayam, to forever be the non-maker. Kartara means the maker, the doer, the creator. Akartara means the non-maker, the non-doer, the non-creator. Kartaram api, although I'm the creator, tasya of this, mam vidhi, know me, akartaram avyayam, know me to forever be the non-doer. What's Krishna doing? He's telling us, you can be in this world but not of it. You can be detached even though you're acting in the world. And the proof you can be detached even while being in this world is that I created the world along with its entire socio-economic system. And despite that, I'm completely aloof from the world. Therefore, it's possible to act in the world and be completely untethered by the world and transcendental. Did you follow that? Are we less spiritual than Krishna? Not really. He's eternal, we're eternal. It's kind of like you're made out of spirit. Even our Shakti, we're not called, there's the material world, Maya Shakti, then there's the internal potency, the Antaranga Shakti, the spiritual potency, Chit Shakti, and then we're a third type of Shakti. We're called Tatastha, which just means situated on the shore, in between, which indicates that we are spiritual energy, but we are small enough that we can be overwhelmed by the material energy, whereas Krishna is big enough that he can't be overwhelmed by the material energy. But Krishna does not say that we are made out of matter. Rather, we are mame vangsa. We're his parts. Jiva loke, jiva bhutasna. The living beings are eternally Krishna's parts. They're his parashakti, his superior potency. In the Gita, Krishna says there's two types of energy. There's the material potency and there's the superior potency. And we are the superior potency. So it's not that we are fundamentally different than God in the sense that we're not spiritual. Therefore, although Krishna is distinct from us in many ways, one way that Krishna is not distinct from us is that Krishna can act and not be materially contaminated. Similarly, we can also act and not be materially contaminated. We have this in common with Krishna, and therefore Krishna can introduce himself, despite being God, he can introduce himself as a model of how to live in this world without being of this world, and we can actually follow Krishna as a model. Has he done this before? Yes, he has. When did he do it? In the 3rd chapter, when he said he still has responsibilities to perform. And he would be the cause of putting the world into ruination if he didn't do his duty. Therefore, we should also do our duty. And so Krishna regularly introduces himself not just as God, but also as a God that has a lot in common with us. Not everything in common with us, but a whole heck of a lot in common with us. This is a totally subversive and brilliant theological foundation of our tradition. That's all over the Gita. Do you see why I say my point was major? Why is my point better than your point?
It paints a broader picture.
It's true, but why is my point better than your point?
Because you made the point that Krishna's
No, why is my point better than his point? By the way, what is his point versus my point? If you don't know his point versus my point, you can't answer the question. So let's ask a simpler question. What is his point? What is my point?
His point is that this part is about how to act without attachment, and your point is...
And why is this verse about that?
Well, he's talking about the 4 varnas,
And so how is that relevant?
because it's expanding on how to act in this world.
That's right. It's giving you something to plug into. Right? I want you to spend your money, and you can buy one of these 3 items with your money today. Right? It's giving you a system. Okay, great. That's what he's saying. And what supports that is Krishna saying this right after he's told Arjuna to be detached and do his duty. And so then he says, I've created a system for you. I'm God. I created a system. Have faith in this system. And then I told you, to do your duty and not be attached. I then told you I'm God. I then told you I created a system for how you can do your duty without being attached. Therefore, you should do that. Okay, great. That's what he says. What do I say?
You're saying that Krishna is explaining that he was able to create the universe without being attached to the material energy.
And therefore Krishna was able to create the universe and all of its social divisions without becoming attached. And therefore we can follow in his footsteps and become detached like he is. Why is my version better than his version? Yes.
Because you made that point earlier, and it's a theme in the Gita that you
Okay, it's a theme in the Gita, sure. That's not why it's better, though, in this section. Why is my read better than his read? Yeah. Because he directly says it in the verse. I like your idea. I think your idea is brilliant. I'm into your idea. But my idea is better, not because your idea is less brilliant. It's fantastic. I love your idea. But because my idea is directly what Krishna is saying in theirs. Why are you saying what he said many times previously? It's in the verse. I read the 2nd half of the verse, and the 2nd half of the verse is exactly what I'm saying. Yeah, but that's not the point. The point is mine is better because as we're trying to understand what this particular verse is saying, not what the whole Gita teaches, not what the chapter teaches, but what this verse is teaching and how this verse is most strongly connected to the preceding verse and the subsequent verse, the strongest evidence will be what you can find in the verse itself. And if there's an explanation in the verse itself, then that explanation wins. If we only had half the verse, you would win. But we have the whole verse, therefore I win. What you said is no less brilliant. It's no less important in the context of the whole teaching. But Krishna says, although I created this system, I'm unattached. Meaning it's possible to be in this world, but not of this world, and I'm an example. Did you follow this? When you want to understand how a verse is connected to the previous verses, you have to look at the verse carefully. And you have to assume Krishna's telling you in the verse itself. If you fail utterly to figure out what the verse is saying that connects to the preceding verse, what do you do next, Dom? I just said if you look at the verse itself and you can't figure it out, what do you do next? I've lost all faith in you. If you can't do it, what do you do next? Yes. You look at the next verse. And you look at the next couple verses. What else can you do? You go back and look at a couple previous verses. But that's always going to be secondary to looking at the verse itself. The first thing you want to do is dive into the verse itself. You follow this? According to the three modes of material nature and work associated with them, the four divisions of human society are created by me. And although I am the creator of the system, you should know that I am yet the non-doer, being unchangeable. There is no work that affects me, nor do I aspire for the fruits of action. One who understands this truth about me also does not become entangled in the fruit of reactions of work. By learning about how Krishna is able to be in this world but not of this world. Hang on one second. Shri, can you take care of that for me? Thank you. Thank you, Rekha. Did you guys follow this? Rekha, you be me if you need to. Close the door. Did you guys follow this? Listen to it again. There is no work that affects me, nor do I aspire for the fruits of action. One who understands this truth about me also does not become entangled in the fruitive reactions of work. Krishna is a model. If you understand how he's able to be in this world but not of it, create the world but not be touched by it, then in your little mini Krishna-ness, in your little mini actions in the world that are, I don't know, they're so small compared to what Krishna does. You can't even say they're 1/1,000,000th. They're tiny, infinitesimally small, but you're still in this world. Then you'll be able to do your part without becoming attached. You get it? This awareness of Krishna. And what are the things? I don't aspire. Listen to Krishna. He's not saying I'm the creator of the whole universe. Listen to what he says. Understand this point. How beautiful it is when you have a monistic idea that we are divine. We are created by Brahman. We are therefore little tiny pieces of Brahman. Little tiny infinitesimally small pieces of Brahman. When you're able to understand that, then these kind of verses make sense. There's no work that affects me. Is there any work that necessarily affects you? No. But Krishna is in this way a model of a perfect person. He's also God, but he's also a model of a perfect person. We don't have to just say how Krishna is different. We can also say how Krishna is the same. He's never completely the same. He's always different because he's the source and we're the product. He's the first We're the second. Nityo Nityanam. He's the one eternal amongst eternals. Chaitanas Chaitananam. He's the one conscious amongst all conscious. You follow? Eko Bahunam. He's the one amongst the many. You follow? This is from the Upanishads. But he's still like us. There's two birds in a tree. One is the witness, the other one is eating the fruits. The one is witnessing, the other one eating the fruits. Us and God sitting in the tree of life in your body. Krishna's with you, and he's watching you enjoy and suffer, but he's not enjoying and suffering, but he's watching you because he's your friend. You follow? It's another story from the Upanishads. It's a very beautiful understanding of spirituality. There's no work that affects me, nor do I aspire for the fruits of action. What a bizarre thing for God to say. I don't aspire for the fruits of action. Duh, you're the Supreme Lord. Obviously, you're not a regular lusty dog wandering around the world trying to get the fruits of your action, right? Why is it relevant that Krishna makes such a non-glorification of himself? It would be like, if Ross was like, I'm able to pick up a pencil. You're like, okay, bro. Like, so can my 5-year-old, You know what I mean? How is that so impressive? Kumi's like, I'm able to walk. She can do a handstand. Why is I can walk. How is that impressive? Do you understand? I can touch my nose. How are these glorifications? Why would Krishna be saying such minimal things? There's no work that affects me, nor do I aspire for the fruits of action. Why would this be relevant? Yes?
Because we're just like him.
Because we can also become just like him and not aspire for the fruits of action. And then no work will affect us, and we can do our duty without being affected, and we can become Krishna-esque in this way. Which doesn't mean you become God, but it does mean you become divine and transcendental. Is God transcendental? Yeah, so are we. Is God divine? Sure, so are we. Is God spiritual? Yep, and so are we. Do you see the beauty of a monistic doctrine that doesn't do away with the ability to interface with the deity? And so Krishna's beginning to play with these ideas of the value in seeing God as distinct, which creates incredible devotion, along with seeing our similarities with the deity, which creates us all being little mini Buddhas walking around, acting detached, being like a lotus that's in the water but not wet. Do you see how this further supports my reading over yours? You see it? That doesn't mean your point isn't even more beautiful. And Krishna also introduces the Varna system as the way in which you cannot just follow your nose, but discover your nature. Does it indicate that you're born in the system? It does not. It says it's divided by your nature and your works. So no matter what family you were born into, if you had the nature of a priest, you become a priest. If you had the nature of a worker, you become a worker. There's nothing saying you're born into it. So he does away with the whole caste system in this verse. He introduces the caste system and does away with the caste system. That's pretty cool, right? All the liberated souls in ancient times acted with this understanding of my transcendental nature. Therefore, you should perform your duty following in their footsteps. So this understanding of me, which then helps you live a better, more detached life, by following me and also understanding there's some higher reality. There's two ways you benefit. You understand there's a higher thing going on, you don't get so caught up in the low stuff, and you have a perfect person to model your behavior after. And since the dawn of creation, people have been having this understanding of God as being both the model as well as being the goal. The person that you follow, as well as being the big yes in your life that you get attached to, which allows you to let go of all the other little piddly stuff that people get attached to. It works two ways. You're reaching up for the stars, right? And you have someone you can follow. What a beautiful system. You get little bits of this, like pick up the cross and follow me. Be ye perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. There are little statements in the Bible like this. but they largely get drowned out. Did it fix? Great. They largely get drowned out because people get so freaked out about being too Christ-like that they almost want to go and eat Big Macs every day to prove how debauched they are and then pray to Jesus. And that becomes the glorification. Despite the fact that I live like a joke, that somehow or other that makes Jesus all the more glorious because I'm guaranteed a place in heaven, even though I'm the most exploitative, low-class, debauched person in the room. You follow? And to even try to be divinely inspired is a sin against God. You just need to wallow in your pathos and your sin and your debauchery and cry Jesus. And that's the best you could hope for. You sorry sap. It's such a better theology. It's such a better idea. The connectivity between us and God. The similarity between us and God. While also exploring the distinction. You guys following this? Right? So, Krishna's so sharp. It's like, I create a system. So when I say to act attached, act in this way. But it's not based on birth. Actually, I myself am showing you how you can act in this world. If you can understand me, then you can start to model it in your own life, in your own way. And I'm the goal, the big yes in your life, that helps you not sweat the small stuff and reach up and touch the stars. And I'm also the person who's going to show you systematically how to move forward in your life. And people are doing this for all time. This is something every culture is going to realize. All the ancients are going to ultimately have to realize this truth. These are essential spiritual building blocks of any legitimate tradition. And therefore you should also follow. And Krishna manages to somehow be non-sectarian. Even the intelligent are bewildered in understanding what is action and what is inaction. Kim karma kim akarmeti kavayo api atra mohitaha. Kavaya, the kavis, the poets, they're bewildered. Mohitaha, they're bewildered about kim karma, what is action? Kim akarma, what is inaction? It says kim akarma, kim akarmeti. Ati is like a quotation mark. What is action? What is inaction? Kavayo atra mohita. Even the learned people get bewildered in this. By this stuff. I'm trying to figure this out. What's Krishna going to say next? Don't look at your books. What's Krishna going to say next? Well, he is going to say that, but before that, he always says this. He says, these people are bewildered. Therefore, I shall speak about this so that you may know. And then he answers the question. This is a formula, always. I mean, I know the Gita, so I know what's happening. It's not like I'm guessing, but this is always the case. When I'm reading a Vedic text, I don't know, and I see a verse like this, I know the next line is going to be, and therefore I will speak on this topic. Tate karma pravakshami. I am speaking. I will speak about that action to you. Te. Yat having known this, mokshase, ashubhat, you will become liberated from all this inauspicious. Because I'm going to explain it to you so you can get it. So you can start to approach it. Now, Krishna doesn't, it's not like Krishna's going to give you a detailed step-by-step like you would get if you plugged coordinates into Waze. He's speaking for all time to all people, which means we have to focus on principles. Then you have gurus in your life. And they can, just like today I was doing the arti and I was getting Prabhupada dressed warm because it's cold, so we always make sure Prabhupada's dressed appropriately and warm, and I make sure that the morning, people did a good job, and so I kind of clean up their work. And then as I was serving Prabhupada and jumping back and forth between the altar and Prabhupada's altar, some lady was here and she said, "Oh, is that your guru?" I think she thought Prabhupada was alive, which of course he is, but she thought, like many of us thought. I thought when I first got to the temple, I was trying to be quiet because I didn't want to disturb the person who was meditating there.
Everyone thinks that.
Everybody thinks that. You must not have thought that.
I've heard it really fast.
But you never thought that because you were raised in the temple, so you were seeing Prabhupada before your earliest memories. You have some memory of Prabhupada. I don't believe there was ever a time where you thought that because you would have come when you were young enough. Did you?
I don't think so.
No. It's one of the benefits of being born in our movement. But I can remember coming in and trying to be like all quiet and like not wanting to be awkward. And so she was like that. She was thinking that, which I thought was foolish because she's Hindu, so she should know murtis and stuff like that. She should have known. But you have gurus to give you some of the details. But then the Shastra speaks, some details are given, but mainly principles are given. Mainly principles are given. And so if you're careful, you read those principles and they're pregnant, they're profound, they're deep. You read those principles and they are your friends. They will guide you. But you shouldn't expect it to be some kind of paint by numbers situation. This is wisdom for the ages. It's principles. You have to rise up to meet it. May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind be always at your back and the rains fall gently on your fields. It's an old Gaelic poem, prayer. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. And may the rain fall gently on your fields. And may God hold you in the palm of his hand until we meet again. It's when somebody dies, you say it. May the road rise up to meet you so that you're not like walking up a huge hill or walking down a huge hill. The road kind of it's almost like the road's helping you. But you still have to walk. May the wind be always at your back. You're walking, but you're getting a little help. May the rain fall gently on your fields. You're having to grow crops, but the rain's helping you. You get it? You have to do your part. We have to rise up to meet these teachings. We have to reflect on them. We have to become profound. We have to become deep thinkers. There's a reason why I'm squeezing you guys, because Krishna is going to lay out some really powerful wisdom now that will help you, that will inform you, that will guide you, that will answer questions you have in your life today. But you have to rise up to it. It's not just free. You have to do your part. Even the intelligent are bewildered, not determining what is action and what is inaction. Now I shall explain to you what action is, knowing which you shall be liberated from all misfortune. And then the famous verse. Karma no hyapi bodhavyam. Of karma, that is to be understood. Bodhavyam cha vikaramanaha. Of forbidden action, that is to be understood. Akarmanascha bodhavyam. Of inaction, that is to be understood. Gahano karmano gatihi. The path of karma is profound. You have to know what is action, what is forbidden action, and what is inaction. The path of action is profound, but it has these three basic divisions. What you should do, what you should not do, and what is inaction. Does that make sense? V is a modifier. You put V in front of a word that means more. So you have liberation as mukti, and then vimukti is like topmost liberation. So karma means material action. So you put V in front of karma, it becomes V-karma, and that becomes really bad action. That really puts you in the material world. So sometimes he makes it better, sometimes he makes it worse, depends on what the word it's modifying is. Karmano hyapi bodhavyam. Bodhavyam cha vikarmanaha. Akarmanas cha bodhavyam. Gahana karmano gati. The intricacies of action are very hard to understand. Therefore, one should properly know what action is, what forbidden action is, and what inaction is. And now Krishna is going to introduce it. Thank you very much, IGTV.